21 years of activities, this interesting edition of the Info Poverty Conference aims at exploring how digital citizens in a legal framework of rights and duties can build a fairer society, now that the paradigms have overcome the space-time dimension, creating increasingly complex digital mechanisms. The digital transformation is moving at an unprecedented speed worldwide. However, the COVID-19 pandemic, wars and climate change emergency have exacerbated existing inequalities, resulting in a wider digital divide within our society and among countries. The growth of and geographical distribution of the digital transformation have been uneven. It is of course important to revert this trend, which has an impact also on the achievement of the 2030 Agenda. Thanks to the observatory, with the participation of many African and Latin American governments, many remote villages and disadvantaged communities have successfully benefited from the application of advanced digital services for their development needs. By promoting the application of information and communication technologies as tools of development in vulnerable areas, it is carrying out poverty reduction initiatives on the ground in developing countries, which can contribute to reducing inequalities and to the achievement of SDGs, and in particular Goal 1, end poverty in all its forms everywhere, in order to leave no one behind. Today's conference is no doubt a timely and important opportunity to explore what are the essential values to be promoted within the digital transformation, putting people at the center, with digital technology benefiting all individuals, businesses, and society as a whole. Our society are now faced with the challenge of shaping fair rules providing for duties and rights for the digital citizens. The internet can be a powerful tool, but it needs to be ruled. Connectivity on its own is not sufficient anymore. Governments, individual users, and private sectors and the private sector are to maintain the integrity of the internet community, locally and internationally. Devising just and fair participation mechanism and appropriate rights and duties will be the main challenge for this future. The United Nations is providing an incredible platform to strengthen a multilateral response to increasing inequalities, also in the field of new technologies and innovation. The Secretary General's Roadmap on Digital Cooperation brought a vision for a digitally interdependent world that connects, respects, and protects all people. The content of the roadmap, therefore, can help define and implement common actions towards a fairer society and a more sustainable world, in line with the 2030 Agenda. The recovery process must be connected to the goals of the 2030 Agenda, which should remain our compass in these challenging times, and digital technologies are key enablers for achieving the UN Sustainable Development Goals, which require more than ever our concerted efforts. In this context, we must also underline the importance of implementing a human-centered and inclusive application of digital technologies, increasing the digital access and removing barriers in a context of respect for human rights and individual freedoms. Multilateralism is key in this connection. Besides the pioneering role played by the European Union in this field, following the Secretary-General report on our common agenda, the process leading to the drafting of the Global Digital Compact at the UN level was starting and will prove of paramount importance, building on technology, on a technology track involving all stakeholders, and outlining shared principle for an open, free and secure digital future for all, where the application of human rights online will be part and parcel of the process. The document will be a milestone also contributed to the Declaration for Future Generation and in preparation of the Summit of the Future. Needless to say that the involvement of the private sector and all relevant stakeholders is instrumental in finding sustainable solutions. Since the beginning of this year, Italy has been a member of the Economic and Social Council of the United Nations and will continue to promote this vision for a fairer, more inclusive and equal digital society. I'm sure that thanks to all the distinguished panelists and speakers that are joining us, starting from Ms. Daniela Bas, Director of Indesa, we will enjoy a fruitful discussion of the interesting subjects dealt with today, with a view to finding new solutions to very sensitive issues. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Councillor, for your inspiring words and such an interesting statement. And thank you also to the Permanent Mission of Italy for always supporting this conference for more than 20 years. So thank you very much. I am now pleased to present a video message from Ms. Daniela Bas, the Director of the Division for Inclusive Social Development at the UNDESA.
Geographically, Europe look at Indian penetration close to 87%. You move to Asia, goes down to 57%. You move to Africa, it goes down further 37%. Household internet access. Go to Europe, developed nations, it's close to 90%. For developing countries, 47%.
Can we start the video, please?
Yes.
The population left out. What happens to those who have been part of this success? So this will become a huge social challenge, economic challenge, political challenges in the days to come if we don't reach this divide with significant investment in building quality infrastructure, making internet access development. Now, also what we have seen, because internet is open to develop, like
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues and friends, I'm honored to be present to this important annual appointment, and I wish to commend the President of OCCM, Pier Paolo Saporito, for his commitment to improve the well-being of communities and people, and the choice of the theme this year that really looks at the future. Because the COVID-19 crisis risked to reverse decades of progress made in the field of social development. And though COVID is not defeated yet, the world is moving steps forward for a fair and inclusive recovery that benefits really everyone. Women and girls, older persons, persons with disabilities have been particularly hard hit by the social and economic consequences of the pandemic. And as countries emerge from the COVID-19 crisis, the promotion of human rights and gender equality and social justice should be central to recovery efforts. And similarly, transitions towards sustainable development should not increase social inequality, and benefits and transition costs should be equitably distributed. And the roadmap agreed by members of the United Nations in 2015, that is the 2030 Agenda and its Sustainable Development Goals, has as motto, as we know, leaving no country and no one behind. So leaving no one behind means leaving no one offline. And in spite the number of persons online has increased rapidly in recent years, half of the world's population, that is an estimated 3.7 billion people, does not use the internet. 4/5 of the offline population are located in Africa and Asia Pacific. These are, data. This is data collected by the ITU, the International Telecommunication Union, in 2017. However, in 2019, 80% of individuals in developed countries were online, compared to 47% of people in developing countries and 19% in the least developed countries. that is again data collected by the ITU. And you can find much more information in our policy briefs. The policy brief number 92 produced by DESA, which is entitled Leveraging Digital Technologies for Social Inclusion. So indeed, digital technologies play a critical role in the recovery of COVID-19 response by enabling remote work, remote learning, and delivery of essential goods and services. We have seen how it worked well. And digital technologies can reactivate the economy and drive also social economic transformation, increase productivity, enhance connectivity between nations and international economies that we have seen as well. And digital technologies have also a critical role to play in implementing the 2030 Agenda, because digitalization is a tool for the achievement of the SDGs. There is the need to connect the unconnected, to keep in mind affordability and skilling while reaffirming the UN values and human rights, in particular in the digital environment, to more controversial ones such as artificial intelligence, the big tech companies' business model, and cybersecurity. Countries should ensure that everyone, especially the poorest, can benefit from the ingenuity of science and technology. And yet, digital technologies alone cannot solve complex issues such as hunger, poverty, inequality, or environmental challenges. However, they are one of the tools to address the root causes of these challenges. So, while digital technologies can accelerate progress towards achieving the SDGs, connect people and build capacity and drive accountability, unconscious bias and social cultural norms can cause them to reinforce exclusion and biases. Societies need to guard against such risks and engage in a public debate about the risk and ethics surrounding the use of digital technologies. Let me also make a quick reference to human resources that are the cornerstone of digital transformation. Economies and labor markets are being transformed by digitization. New jobs and new sectors, which require a new and dynamic set of digital and cognitive skills, are rapidly emerging. And thus, investing in digital skills can improve the resilience of economies and individuals. And this is particularly true of vulnerable populations who often lack the necessary digital skills for a digital society and economy. And allow me to conclude by making reference to what discussed during the Commission for Social Development in 2020. And I really encourage this forum as well to, one, contribute in implementing strategies that promote decent work, in particular in the digital economy.
So we thank Director Bass for again participating to the conference and for such inspiring words. I'm here with the President of OCCAM, Pierpaolo Saporito, and we are now delighted to present you another video message from the Assistant Director General for Communication and Information at UNESCO, Mr. Gelassi.
Recorded message. Here with the moderator steps. Then now we can align.
Monsieur Massari, Ms. Daniela Bass, Director of the UN Department of Economic and Social Affairs, Mr. Pierpaolo Saporito, President of the Odessa Competence Center for Artificial Intelligence and Machine Learning and of the Info Poverty Program, distinguished participants. I'm very pleased to deliver this video message for the 22nd Info Poverty World Conference. The topic of the conference, the duties and rights of digital citizens in 2022 and beyond, is both relevant and timely. We are witnessing a massive acceleration of digital transformation at an unprecedented scale. Today, 4.9 billion people use the internet. By 2025, we'll have globally one data interaction every 18 seconds and 163 zettabytes of data. This huge data volume is actually expected to double every 2 years. However, with the rapid rise in digital connectivity came an increased digital divide. Although data is present everywhere, it is not representing everyone. For example, women living in less connected rural areas are especially vulnerable to being underrepresented in digital spaces, as many don't have access to mobile phones nor to internet devices. Much more can be done to ensure that data is used to provide useful insights to all, whether in the public sector, in business, or to consumers. As such, UNESCO is committed to supporting digital transformation and AI adoption in a human rights-based, open, accessible, and multi-stakeholder-driven manner. This is done through our awareness raising, standard setting, policy advice, and capacity building efforts. One of the important stakeholders for UNESCO is young people, who are the digital natives. Youth make up a large portion of our global population. Today, there are 1.2 billion young people aged 15 to 24 years. In Africa, more than 60% of the population is under the age of 25. UNESCO recognizes young people as essential partners in shaping the future. Around the globe, young people are rightly demanding more just, equitable, and progressive societies. However, they can only be a positive force for change if they are given the proper means to improve their knowledge and skills. This is why UNESCO is working on media and information literacy for youth. We are informing them about the new technologies such as artificial intelligence through engaging comic strips and offering them micro-learning courses on topics such as defending human rights in the age of artificial intelligence. Through our work, we are igniting debates about digital divides, algorithmic biases, social media echo chambers, and the daily generated e-waste. Let me now address today's leaders, policy makers, regulators, and civil servants. They are not necessarily young, nor necessarily digitally literate. We must remember that many of them face challenges as non-digital natives. For example, 51% of government's chief information officers say that siloed strategies and decision-making processes prevent them from inspiring digital transformation. We saw too often resistance to innovation and experimentation coming from government's organizational culture. More specifically, what is lacking is a mature data collection, management and government processes, as well as sufficient investment in digital equipment, data analysis, IT, and AI skills. As a result of these barriers, almost half of 198 countries don't have programs to improve digital skills in the public sector. These are difficult but not insurmountable challenges. We need to create a government culture that is suited for the digital age, a culture that fosters innovation, experimentation, and agile execution. UNESCO is working to strengthen policymakers and civil servants' capacities through its AI and digital transformation competency framework. As part of our whole of government and whole of society approach, we are also collaborating with judicial actors to protect the human rights, promote the rule of law, and defend democracy. Digital transformation can help judicial systems improve access to justice. For example, the digitization of administrative results can result in significant time savings, as it happened in Panama, where 96% time saving was achieved in the end-to-end judicial service. As the use of artificial intelligence grows, judges and prosecutors will play a critical role in protecting the human rights and the rule of law while addressing the challenges of implementing transparent and trustworthy AI systems. UNESCO has trained so far over 4,000 judicial officers from over 138 countries on the benefits and challenges of artificial intelligence. Finally, in addressing emerging challenges, it is critical to be inclusive, since no individual nor a single stakeholder group has all the answers. In order to ensure the participation of all voices in the policy-making process, we need to follow an inclusive multi-stakeholder approach. Youth, AI development communities, enterprises, and activists are some of the frequently overlooked groups. Involving advocates for gender equality and environmental protection enriches discussions and accelerates progress towards a more inclusive, sustainable, and equitable public policy. Being ready for the digital age requires everyone's participation. We should leave no one behind, as the UNESCO mantra says. I wish you a successful conference and a future in which everyone is empowered to become a digital citizen, capable of reaping the full benefits of the ongoing digital transformation. Thank you for your attention.
Around the world, 2 billion people do not have access to internet. 3 billion people.
We thank the Assistant Director, Mr. Gelassi, for his words and efforts at UNESCO. Now, I have the pleasure to give the floor to the President of Occam and of the InfoPoverty Program, Architect Pier Paolo Saporito, that I'm sure you all know.
Co-chair of the G20 Task Force on Digital Transformation for the last 2 years. First during the Italian G20 presidency last year, 2021, and this year during
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 22nd InfoPoverty World Conference. Since 2001, this conference has been discussing how the digital revolution could be better oriented toward the fight against poverty and the achievement of MDGs and SDGs. Now, not only discussion, but concrete facts. Thanks to the contribution of more than 1,000 eminent speakers, this has resulted in many best practices, such as welfare, telemedicine, e-learning, and e-agriculture, food security, and e-government. Apply in the ICT villages developed in the various countries. Among them, the village of Sambaina in Madagascar was proclaimed UN Millennium Village in 2007. The digital revolution allows us to be connected in spatial time-space dimensions, thanks to the web, which constitutes the key tool of the digital era. Now, we live in a kind of human digital symbiosis in a world that becomes increasingly virtual. The expanded virtual universe built by private investors who use innovation and applications as marketing policy is becoming now a kind of far west that institutions fail to regulate. How can the digital citizen find an active role in shaping this new society and not submitted passively, reduce himself to a consumer producer of data? Internet was born on the wave of post-68 libertarian movement for free access and free open communities. In principle of the solidarity, development and global connectivity were the underpinning for a better society. But now the ideas of the founder appears compromised in the hand of oligopolists. Therefore, faced with this uncertain condition, many people think that the need to arise to redesign the whole architecture of the communication system, which today is obsolete and socially penalizing. How can a new web, safer and socially acceptable for a digital citizen, come about? This question is now open. And in these days, the theme of the new Web 3.0 is in discussion at the Internet Governance Forum in Addis Ababa. With the new technologies as ITO, blockchain, 5G, semantic languages, 3D, and artificial intelligence, it is possible to expand the web capacity and optimize it to be more free and safe, decentralized, open to all. This construction of the new architecture requires a strong convergence and alliance between all private and public stakeholders, as advocated by the UN Secretary General and in recent document, Our Common Agenda. This will require a holistic approach, aiming to provide new solutions for climate, social and economic emergency, providing quantum platform based on algorithms epistemologically oriented to improve living conditions. To understand better, I take an analogy with the real world. An exemplary discovery was pi, allowing harmonious proportion, human creation, the golden ratio of divine proportion that permeates our urban and environmental civilization. In similar way, I might it possible to discover a golden algorithm in this tangled mass of number and data, capable of harmonizing the entire new virtual universe, a codex that enforces human rights in the virtual dimension and highlighting violation, a codex that can bring together all stakeholders, entrepreneurial, financial, governmental, and social forces toward common objective, a codex that empowers digital citizenship, enabling everyone to participate actively when taking waste and abuses to the planet and the people, like a figurative antivirus. A golden algorithm capable of detecting the roots of conflict, avoiding aberrations such as the war, the absolute evil that should be considered humanity's ultimate taboo. All to build a fairer society or fall into irreversible automatism. Artificial intelligence poses fundamental issues that should not be addressed as entrepreneurial technicalities, but should be taken up at the highest levels with competent and ethical participation. Who can best manage this process involving all of humanity with its variety, institutions, needs, culture, and power? This is a great challenge that the UN will face, accelerating the achievement of the SDGs and drawing of digital tools as best practice. The process should be reinforced by new alliances composed by nations and digital superpowers that are changing now our living. This is a complex but essential challenge that this conference is called upon to be taken, contributing to open the way for concrete, viable, converging action that will serve to consciously start a new digital era. I voted for a fairer, more inclusive and sustainable digital society. Our commitment at this 22nd edition of the conference is to treasure all the insights that emerge from our discussion and to make them available to enrich the UN system and its capacity to provide the leadership now more necessary than ever to ensure peace and prosperity in our daily lives. I thank you so much and I wish you a very good work. Discussion. Thank you. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the
Thank you, President Saporito, for always such inspiring words. I am now honored to present you Dr. Selik, Chair of the Board Consortium for Sustainable Urbanization. Dr. Selik will moderate the first session. So without further ado, I leave her the floor.
Thank you very much. Excellencies, distinguished speakers, and guests, it's a great pleasure and honor for me to moderate the InfoPoverty World Conference, which I attended for the past 20 years while I was working at the UN and I was the president of the CSU. President Saporito, together with the Italian Permanent Mission, is delivering a very impressive conference again. Bravo. It is very important that the UN SDGs are known and achieved all over the world. Let me tell you why we are very proud to partner with you in this meeting. The CSU is an NGO in consultative status with ECOSOC, formed to promote a better understanding of the role of sustainable urbanization in the planning of our cities. We connect global thought leaders concerned with urbanization to exchange ideas. CSU focus is on replicable ideas and concepts, best practices, and speculative proposals. We work closely with UN Habitat to promote the UN SDGs and advocate for responsible design and planning, increasing awareness about related emerging issues and facilitated knowledge transfer between policymakers, delegations, urbanists, architects, academics, and activists. We aim to catalyze cooperation and collaboration with emphasis on SDG 11 and the new urban agenda. Apart from Green Cities, monthly lectures, and annual gala, CSU has organized many flagship conferences at the UN that bring together design professionals, public officials to address best practices and lessons learned to influence the crafting of public policy and reshaping of our built environment. The population of cities will increase by 2.5 billion people in the next 30 years. Therefore, we have to transform existing cities to sustainable cities all over the world if we want to avoid food shortages, mobility problems, increased CO2 levels, livable housing shortages. Sustainability needs to be achieved because there are huge inequalities, injustices, natural and man-made disasters, hunger, anger, conflicts, and suffering. With a global pandemic, the necessity of sustainable cities has become more imminent. The best tool for success is technology and just digital world. The local and national governments and all the stakeholders should use digital tools to spread knowledge and implement it correctly and transparently. Organizations such as OCAM and CSU have to disseminate workable solutions, innovative thinking related to the SDGs. We think that everyone should try to avert the existentialist threat of climate change, which already started to impact our daily lives and our planet through digital tools. We should convince the national and local governments to fight with climate change, urge citizens to apply unrelenting pressure on their politicians with the use of social media. The digitalization of health, socialization, information, and politics should have the objective of serving humanity as referred in the introduction to this panel. If corporations can have a genuine commitment to find solutions and allow dramatic improvements if conflicts can be solved by peaceful negotiations, and if human beings and their institutions can reduce the level of their greed for money and power, we can achieve a just digital society achieving SDGs. That will be beneficial for everyone. Now, I would like to introduce our distinguished speakers. They are very accomplished, so forgive me for trying to introduce them in a very short time frame. I will start with Mr. Patricio Civilli, the IDLO Permanent Observer to the United Nations. He has been the highest ranking Italian at the UN for many years. He was awarded the title of Commander of the Order of Merit of the Italian Republic, which is conferred by decree of the President of the Republic on a proposal from the Prime Minister. The decree speaks of him as personality of vast political experience and a brilliant career at the UN. Well, that is what they say, and I think that I have never seen anyone in my years at the UN who does not admire him or respect him. It is my honor to call him my boss and my friend, Mr. Civilli. The floor is yours.
Caro Pierpaolo, Consigliere Romiti, dear allied excellencies and friends. I'm very sorry that an engagement in Rome connected with the annual assembly of my organization, the International Development Law Organization, will not make it possible for me to be with you in New York this year, as I've had the pleasure to do for the past many years, almost too many to count. A warning for those who are attending this conference for the first time. These conferences tend to be addictive. They leave you enriched, challenged, and wanting more. Much of this is due to the leadership of Pierpaolo Saporito, who is tireless in his drive to gain and share knowledge on different, but in his fertile mind, all interconnected dimensions of the digital revolution and its impact on the human condition. And as a long-time UN official before joining IDLO, I've always appreciated how Pierpaolo has approached the UN venue of these conferences, not simply as a convenient and of course prestigious location, but as an intellectual and policy challenge that of seeking angles from which these conferences could make a distinct contribution to advance the larger UN mission for peace and development. Since I could not be with you today, Pierpaolo was kind enough to share with me an advanced version of his opening statement. And it seems to me that in that statement he has gone further and deeper than in these directions than ever before by approaching the digital citizen theme of this conference in a way that fully captures the people-centered approach that characterizes Agenda 2030 and its Sustainable Development Goals, and by tackling at the core the overall relationship between the digital revolution and the fundamental transformation called for by Agenda 2030, pointing to the commitment to the eradication of poverty as the basic nexus that should guide this relationship. This conference is, of course, not the only forum in which this relationship is being addressed. But it strikes me that also the UN itself finds it difficult to carry out a comprehensive debate on the digitalization processes underway, a debate that would encompass in an integrated way the technological dimensions, the human rights implications, and their contribution as means of implementation of the SDGs. Also, to the extent that broader governance dimensions are discussed in ECOSOC and the General Assembly, the institutional angles tend to be the focus rather than the more fundamental policy and existential dimensions. This conference, given the intellectual orientation that has been imparted to its agenda, has a chance to make a contribution that is both technical and ethical. Contribution that is able to foresee the further direction the digital innovation will take, define the governance challenges that they pose, and address the principles that should guide the governance effort. And at the risk of showing another professional bias shaped by my current service with IDLO, it seems to me that the rule of law in both its national and its international dimensions offers the basic orientation that we need to manage as a global public good the knowledge and tools being produced by the digital revolution. I agree with Pier Paolo that given the pace and direction that artificial intelligence and other digital innovations are taking, their governance has become truly urgent. It would, however, be a mistake, to me, a disservice to humankind, to approach this governance process in terms of harnessing, constraining the digital transformation that the world is undergoing. In the same vein, I don't think that we necessarily need to conceive of rules to be applied to each of the different manifestations of the digitalization process. What we need is to be clear and purposeful about the principle that should underlie the laws and policies we put in place to guide the overall governance effort. And we must ensure that the private sector, and indeed all relevant stakeholders in society, are fully engaged with the public sector in this process. The principles underlying the rule of law focus on equality, on fighting discrimination and inequalities, on creating more level playing fields, on social inclusion, and on international cooperation and solidarity. They look at the law as an instrument to make human rights operational, and above all, they seek to gear the law to serve as a people-centered force for justice, national and international. The great economist Amartya Sen reminds us that justice does not need to be defined. You know it when you see it. And the quest for justice extends to all aspects of human endeavor, certainly including the digitalization process now underway. Digitalization is undoubtedly a powerful force for progress, and we are far from having seen the realization of its full potential in this respect. At the same time, misuses are there for us to see and face every day. The challenge now is to make it a force that is at the very center of the drive for justice and inclusiveness, and is bent on leaving no one behind. A central force in creating, in the worlds of SDG 16, the peaceful, inclusive, and just societies that are the ultimate aim of Agenda 2030. Thank you, Alia, and buon lavoro a tutti.
Mr. Chiveli, we are grateful for your profound thinking about law and the digital tools. Now I would like to introduce Professor Emeritus Lance J. Brown, FAIA, President of the Consortium for Sustainable Urbanization. He is an architect, urban designer, author, and distinguished professor emeritus at the School of Architecture, CCNY, He was awarded with the AIA ACSA Topaz Medallion, the highest honor given to an architectural educator in the US. He previously taught at Princeton University, was educated at Cooper Union, and has master's degrees from Harvard University. He has been the president of AIA New York and the co-founder of CSU. It is my privilege to work with him at CSU for the past 13 years. The floor is yours, Lance.
Thank you, dear Alia and distinguished colleagues. Thank you for inviting me to participate in this important and ongoing discussion. In 2008, Sabalant Khan, the executive coordinator of ECOSOC's Global Alliance for ICT and Development, in cooperation with UN Habitat, the American Institute of Architects New York, and the New York Regional Plan Association, opened a conference titled The Forum on Sustainable Urbanization in the Information Age. 35 representatives from around the world, including a dozen mayors, urban planners, ambassadors, officials, academics, architects, and others, spoke to 500 plus attendees assembled to learn about emerging actions and phenomena resulting from the digital revolution. As stated in the proceedings, the forum addressed the global challenges posed by rapid urbanization and its impact on global warming and the natural environment, from poverty to inequality to public health, showing the role of information communication technology in providing solutions. This event, organized by Mr. Khan, Alia Chelak, our moderator, myself, and others, became the founding event of the CSU, over which I now humbly preside. I was born in 1943. This was well before a host of technologies and devices that have totally altered the landscape I was born into. I've lived to see television develop, computers, cell phones, GPS devices, and AI invented. People on the moon, undergarments become outer garments, people talking on sci-fi wristwatches, interracial marriage accepted, and cryptocurrency hit the market. If this is what happened in just the second half of the 20th century, what can we imagine will happen in the next 50 years? It is not even possible now to imagine such growth and change happening without the advances discussed in ICT. I've seen the population of the world grow from 2.5 to 8 billion and counting, and the world become primarily urbanized. We reached 8 billion in advance of projections, and the UN now sees it as almost 11 billion by 2100. These numbers, even if controversial, are essential to knowing the way forward. My interest in this meeting is to see ways in which our ever-emerging environment can employ, take advantage of, and involve new ICT applications to improve our lives and the lives of the world's disadvantaged, especially in the area of the man-made physical environment. Our 2008 forum touched upon many ways that this might happen. However, ongoing and creative and innovative ways means roll out every day and must be applied judiciously and equitably. I'm always thinking about how things interconnect and manifest physically, and how today most everything, from telemedicine, instruction at home and school, repairing a machine, felling a tree, all is aided by ICT. The big question is today how to share this more universally and to provide these benefits further afield. This November, the CSU partnered with others to present a full-day conference on affordable housing and innovative technologies. The first half of the day focused on housing policy, programs, finance, and labor. The second half focused mostly on emerging technologies, including passive house design, mass timber construction, modular housing, and 3D printed housing, a method directly related to community building as defined by SDG 11, and one very much supportive of OCAM itself. A main issue of 3D printing in Africa was a concern over the loss of work for laborers. However, the actual heavy construction being replaced by 3D printing is the most dangerous phase of the work for the workers. So the advantages of 3D printing were economy, efficiency, and health and safety. The adaptation of the new technology would therefore require extensive retraining and likely create a gap in job opportunities for the heavy construction laborers. While the increase in production of housing units would require increased production in interiors, appliances, and furnishings, provoking and providing new jobs, it would take time. This serious dynamic reality needs to be built into all such plans going forward. 3D printed buildings have significant benefits. It ensures construction exactitude. There's no waste. And there is so little material waste. And because fewer human workers are needed, 3D printing can be highly cost-effective, hence offering options for low-cost housing. And less material waste and shorter construction times mean 3D printed buildings have smaller environmental impact than more traditionally constructed buildings. Materials being used for 3D printing vary, most common involving a mix of concrete, hopefully crushed and recycled, fiber, sand, and geopolymers laid in an extrusion apparatus. But some homes have been printed from fully biodegradable materials, including mud, soil, straw, and rice husk. As an indication of the availability of this technology, one speaker said her public library in Sacramento, California, has 3D printers on weekly loan, and her 3-year-old had one at home printing things. These will be extremely common very soon. So, I look forward to discussions about how the evolving world of ever-emerging ICT can address all attendant circumstances, be of equitable benefit, be inclusive, serve to educate diverse populations, and all the while respecting the values of our globally diverse cultures. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Introduce Francesca De Ferrari, Program Management Officer, UN Habitat, New York. She is sustainable development expert with many years of work experience, mainly at the New York office of UN Habitat. She has held a wide variety of roles and responsibilities at UN Habitat and has been the backbone of the office. We are lucky to have her with us. Francesca.
Thank you, Leah. Distinguished delegates, colleagues and guests, good morning. I would like, first of all, to extend my appreciation to the Info Poverty Conference for organizing this interactive discussion on how to encourage the creation of a healthy and free digital society for all. As we have seen in recent years, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic, internet connectivity has become a requisite for full participation in society, which includes having access to education, affordable housing, and critical government activities. Nonetheless, in 2019, 3.7 billion people in the world still did not have access to the internet, with Africa's population being disproportionately impacted. Technologies and innovation are essential tools in tackling climate change and in moving towards sustainable urbanization. Because digital transformation is critical to meet the demand of sustainable development, we must find a way to encourage a healthy and safe digital citizenship that can facilitate this innovation. In 2020, UN Habitat launched the flagship program called People-Centered Smart Cities. The program, based on a multi-level governance strategy, provides strategic and technical support to develop tools for an ethical use of technology and innovation in urban sustainable development projects, with the aim of improving citizen quality of life and ensuring the respect of inclusivity, prosperity, and human rights in cities. UN Habitat recognizes that technology cannot replace citizen engagement in community and city affairs as well as within learner community. For this reason, we developed a global public space program focused on providing a safe digital space in which public engagement is used to deliver accessible and inclusive green spaces. As part of the program, youth is encouraged and empowered in participating in city planning processes through the use of popular virtual building game called Minecraft. An outstanding example of this program result is the regeneration project developed by the Distrito Castellana Norte de Madrid. Furthermore, gender plays an important role in the technological divide. Women often benefit less from innovation and technology than men. In order to empower women and girls and enable them to freely express their voices, opinion, and power for contribution, UN Habitat created Her Cities Toolbox initiative, which support urban development from a girl's perspective. It provides an open and digitally accessible platform for all, facilitating an ongoing dialogue between professionals and citizens so that they have the ability to participate in the city planning process. It is essential to recognize that even though new technologies and innovation are incredible tools for enabling the full potential of sustainable development, they must be dealt with cautiously and responsibly. The development of artificial intelligence technologies provide opportunities to equip and improve city management. However, AI technologies is manifesting at an unprecedented rate in urban centers, often with significant risk and little oversight. UN Habitat's AI and Cities report discusses the risk of AI technologies, including data misalignment, historical biases, privacy and data protection, outcome misinterpretation, and concept drift. Using AI technology without the appropriate governance mechanism and without adequate consideration of the effect on human rights can potentially create catastrophic consequences. Responsible AI use must be considered a priority. Going forward, authorities at both the national, regional, and local level need to be supported with new technologies capacity building strategies. Due to the lack of support on this, local governments, especially in low-income countries, often are forced to depend on the private sector expertise, which in some cases relies on unfavorable terms and conditions, especially in regard to data collection and ownership. In conclusion, going forward, it is essential that interconnectivity access is improved, especially for low-income countries. At the same time, governments should be supported in implementing digital management regulation and legislative frameworks, both at local and national level, in order to avoid extensive collection and recording of individuals' private data. Technologies and innovation are crucial factors in the successful achievement of sustainable development. Therefore, it is fundamental to help governments build skills and grow their technological expertise to develop and effectively use digital technologies in an ethical and inclusive way that leaves no one behind. Thank you.
Thank you, Francesca, for your support and contribution to NGOs like us, and thank you also for mentioning women. Now, I would like to introduce Gernot Richter, Professor Gernot Richter, architect, coordinator, MArch and MS Arch programs, Hillier College of Architecture and Design. Gernot previously taught in both Europe and the US. Projects from his studio have been exhibited at the Centre Pompidou and featured in prominent publications such as Architectural Record and Detail. And he and his students in his digital design build studio research, computer controlled fabrication and manufacturing methods. The floor is yours, Gernot. Thank you.
Thank you for the and besides teaching at NGIT, I'm also on the board of directors at CSU. And today I will talk a little bit about a book where we are currently working on the second edition of Urban Machines that is co-authored with Marcella Del Signore. every year for the next 30 years, 80 million people will move into cities, and that requires a vision for public space. To develop a vision, you need to have the definitions right. If it is not about just the skyline or the physical form, but if we understand the city as a social form, the question would be, how do we measure the quality of a social form? Aristotle once said that a sophisticated society is a social form in which the weakest member of it can live a quality life. Public space is a critical part of that, but dangerously low proportions of public spaces are created. Public space created is often not of high quality. New urban developments are sizably reduced allocations of land for public space, and we see that the failure of market-led development to create and protect public space. At the same time, we see information technology developing at a rapid scale and changing the way we are using the physical public space in cities. Before information technology in a medieval city, for example, you would have to cross a public space in order to go to the fountain to get water, or to go to the market to get food, or you have to go into a public space if you want any kind of information. Information technology has provided an alternative to that. We can communicate online, we can gain goods online, and we can receive information online while sitting at home in our pajamas. The question therefore is, how do we design a public space now differently for a digital culture? Especially because information technology, social media, etc., already dramatically changed the way we are using public space. In 2008, for example, Starbucks introduced free Wi-Fi at all its stores, and working with laptops in coffee shops becomes completely the norm. The smartphone changed the way we're using public space in 2013, when the number of people accessing the internet through mobile devices changed from 10 to 70% just within 1 year. And there are studies that show that people using mobile devices use public space differently. In 2008, Facebook introduced a feature that allows you to post videos. In 2009, flash mob became a global phenomenon. In 2010, Facebook introduced common community pages, a feature that was used 3 months later to organize the protest in Tahrir Square. In 2011, Facebook introduced the feature that allows you to tag photos with location. A few months later, that was used for Occupy Wall Street. 2017, face recognition was introduced by Facebook to detect friends on your pictures. In the same year, Chicago and Detroit purchased that same software for monitoring public spaces in selected neighborhoods. In 2019, Facebook face recognition technology was banned in public space in San Francisco, but at the same year, China to become world leader in the development of artificial intelligence, which speeded up the development of face recognition software and its implementation in public space. So we are creating here a timeline of digital applications and how these applications changed the use of public space. We need to be aware of this relationship between information technology and public space and really think about what will public space turn into if we further expand ourselves and if we expand the physical public space with information technology. In these books, we are introducing different strategies that also address the question of who is changing that public space: municipalities, corporations, or citizens. Hacking, for example, is introduced as one strategy where urban space will emerge from a bottom-up design process, from millions of people being hacked or of being hackers of data and active agents. Our book is also full of case studies with prototypes that deal with hybrids between physical public space and information technology, such as the OMA's Serpentine Pavilion, where projectors and screens are used to connect the citizens to a wide range of inaccessible layers of the City of London. Wikiplaza by Arquitectura, that is an open space laboratory where programmers teach citizens how to build their own apps and to intervene with the city, or the air tree at Eco Boulevard that uses interactive greenhouse technology to cool a public space in the center of Vaquelas, a suburban housing development south of Madrid. The book is also filled with conversations that we had with architects and artists and planners on how information technology can inform public space. We talked to Carlo Ratti about his Trash Track project and how you use the Internet of Things to improve trash removal in cities. We talked to Claudia Pasquero about new urban agricultures and gathering prototypes that use algae, which require CO2 to grow. We talked to Omar Khan about his kinematic structures that unfold when CO2 rises a critical level, and Francis Roche, who developed a robot that transforms the waste of cities into new building materials to build unpredictable urban spaces. Whenever there are new technologies, technologies have always enabled new forms of urban life, from the aqueduct in Rome to the car in the beginning of last century. Once a new technology is introduced, cities are actually changing very quickly. And with information technology, I hope it is not just about efficiency, it's really about quality of space that is critical to determine the health of its citizens. The problem is that most of the resources to develop information technology tools are in the hands of a very few in the private sector. We need to regulate them and work with them to ensure that citizens can decide what issues are addressed and how. We are too happy about apps such as Snapchat, but we don't realize how these same technologies are used by private entities to dictate the characteristic of future public space. This is important because if we don't do anything, large corporations will define the character of public space for us, and the new qualities of public space may only emerge from consumerism. So we count on politicians, we count on architects and urban planners and all citizens to think about a vision for public space for a digital culture. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gernot. That was very interesting, the relationship with public space and digital tools, but that was very interesting. Thank you. Now I would like to introduce Mr. Syed Munir Khasru, Chairman of IPAG, Institute for Policy Advocacy and Governance in Bangladesh. This organization is a think tank based in Bangladesh whose work include economic development and SDGs, regional connectivity and cooperation, international relations and strategic affairs, power and energy. He has an MBA from Wharton School of Business and he is a professor at University of Dhaka's Institute of Business Administration and a global expert of the World Economic Forum. The floor is yours.
Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, no matter which part of the world you are. It's a pleasure to be joining all of you, and thanks to the organizers, particularly OCOM, for having kindly invited me to the 22nd Info Poverty World Conference. It's a pleasure and privilege to be joining again, and I will try to be very free and frank in terms of the next 6-7 minutes. We live in rather very amazing times. I mean, imagine in the last 10 years how the world around us us has changed so dramatically. I mean, it's only 2007 that the first smartphone came, and it looks like it has been with us for ages. So just in 15 years, how the whole landscape has changed. And the pandemic has, as many of my previous speakers have mentioned, have taken this whole digital connectivity, social media to a very different level. And we can't think that how we would have handled these 2 years of lockdowns and travel restriction without having access to e-healthcare services, e-commerce, online buying, shopping, e-learning, so on and so forth. So what has happened is a huge opportunity that's knocking our door. But as it happens in most of the cases, every reward, every opportunity is accompanied by a lot of risks. So just as this whole pandemic years saw the growth of internet users somewhere between 17 to 18% compared to only 7 to 8% in the last 2 decades, and we saw people around the world jumping into the digital platform, and as we speak, more than 4 billion people have social media accounts. What is also equally true and unfortunate, the yawning digital divide. Even as we speak, 2 billion people around the world don't have mobile phones. About 3 billion don't have internet access. And as the co-chair of G20 Task Force on Digital Transformation, while I was working under the 2 presidencies, Indonesian presidency this year and last year the Italian presidency, in course of my interaction work with my colleagues in the industry, what was striking, the divide that persists at different level. Geographically, for example, if internet penetration in Europe is close to 80-90%, it's around 50 to 60% in Asia, less than 40% in Africa. If you look at the developed and developing spectre, in the household penetration of, it stands 80 to 90% for developed economies, it's around 50% for developing economies and only 20% for LDCs. So the question is, if we do not find ways to bridge this gap in the coming years and decades, the results can be very significant in terms of the social, economic, political divide that we may end up facing in the coming decades. And just as many countries from Singapore to South Korea in Asia, then you have Iceland and Estonia, Latvia and Europe doing amazing work. We have had countries like Vietnam, Cambodia falling behind. So unless there is a concerted effort globally, the SDG Agenda 2030 that some of my colleagues have alluded to is already hanging by the thread because of the Ukraine war and the pandemic. So unless we make some well thought out, consistent investment in global digital infrastructure, and we make internet access affordable and accessible, we are heading for a lot of socio-economic disruptions in the coming years. The good news is, at the same time, the opportunities that I referred to in my initial remarks. Today, a poor woman sitting in a village with some handicraft products, whether in sub-Saharan Africa or South Asia or Latin America, can get on board in the digital platform and sell the products and services, bypassing the middlemen making profit. And we are seeing the rise of millionaires, billionaires at a very young age, somewhere between 20 to 30. So this is unprecedented. So without making any capital investment in land, building, you can overnight become a millionaire just being in the platform. So rewards are a lot. At the same time, as we talk about rewards, let's not overlook the risks that we face. Cyber crimes jumped up during digital transformation during the pandemic years, particularly some of the groups, women, youth, children, were very much exposed to these kind of risks. From cyberbullying to sexual harassment, these things have shot up more than 40% during the pandemic. And many instances, this has led to a lot of unforeseen consequences, from suicidal tendencies to people resorting to drugs and all kind of things. So these are serious threats that we face. Add to that the threat of disinformation, misinformation, fake news. And we have seen, even in the oldest democracy of the world, US, what happened in January 6th last year, when during a transition of power, the US Capitol was under attack. it showed to us that even in the most advanced economies, you're not safe from the onslaught of misinformation. Now, having said that, I continue to be optimist, and I believe that the opportunities and the good times and prospect for shared prosperity is quite high, provided our leadership at the highest level comes into some sort of minimum rules of engagement in the digital platform cyber world. But this is becoming increasingly difficult in a multipolar world, and which we saw during the G20 Leadership Summit in Bali. They were struggling to even sign a joint communique, and we have one nation pitted against another. We see countries like Canada, Australia blaming the Chinese for meddling in their electoral process. US has been accusing Russians for meddling in the presidential election, midterm election. So we are in a rather challenging times. So as much as there is enough sufficient reason to be optimistic, it would be rather naive to not to measure that optimism with some caution. But again, I mean, as I say that if your dreams don't scare you, they are not big enough. So we have to dream big, but we also have to be realistic. And I hope in the course of this conference, my fellow speakers and opinion leaders, thought leaders would share insights into how we can maximize the benefit and minimize the risk, because technology will always leapfrog policies, and policies have no option but to adopt to technology, not the other way around. With that note of both optimism and caution, I thank you again for having kindly invited me to this wonderful conference. I wish you all the best, and I remain available to answer any question in interaction beyond this conference. And thank you so much. It has been a pleasure and privilege to join all of you today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Now I would like to introduce Mr. Gerardo Zepita Bermudez, member of OCAM Board, advisor to Broad Communications, former Minister of Science and Technology in Honduras. We are running a little bit late, so I will appreciate if you can make your speech from now on a little bit shorter.
একেবারে স্যার পারফেক্ট 7 মিনিট।